Morning, Borg. Singularity. Me old mucker. It's been a few more weeks, I guess. We still haven't finished. Not close to finishing. And we've turned you on today because we're finally going to get to do the next picture in our planned exit, our planned culmination of the project. And we're going to go in and do that in a minute. Well, I've just come out with the coffee here. This is our path. It's the forest path which we started the season doing a few canvases. So I've just come for a walk really to show you some. I was going to say signs of spring. But as you can see, Borg, the snow has returned. There's a cracking bit of storm damage there, Borg. Look, there's loads of it. I mean, it does beg the question: if these storms, if tree wrecking storms increase, you know, obviously there's going to be less of it around, because even though there's a load of saplings there, Borg, they're on a different, clock, aren't they? So it's a snowy spectacle. We'll see what we can find. There is something I was going to show you, but I think the snow will have covered it now. You can see over there's a vertical that isn't a tree, that is a pole that holds up telephone wires. There is still an old system of telephone wires here for landlines, phones that aren't anything to do with you. But you can see that this specimen, when it fell, has taken the line with it. There's a live cable on the floor. I don't know if it's live anymore, I wouldn't know. But I'm not sure what sort of cable it is, Borg. I presume if it was an electricity one, there would have been plenty of people complaining and demanding it gets fixed. But as it is, this thing... Is this the end? No. This may or may not be a wise thing to do, but look at that. There's the end. Wallop. That looks. Could it be internet cable, Borg? Well, whatever, if that is power or the internet, then that's lights out for you, for these particular people. Yeah, look, it goes all the way over to those houses over there. I saw the ants a couple of weeks ago now. They were out getting started, but look, they suffer the same fate as us with regards to the snow in April just coming and going. They can't get started. I don't want to go on, Borg, And if I do go on, I don't want to go on about the war or related topics, because we're coming to the end now. I want to talk about you and us. Rosebush, that's not likely to bloom anytime soon. Look at that. This I've showed you this sort of thing before, but look, the ants. They've built one right around this very thorny beast. But they're not bothered about the thorns at all. And they're all in there, waiting. very tempted, Borg, to go into the forest here. Oh God, to show you, the state of it. But with talking to you in the one hand and drinking the coffee in the other, with this terrain, we are asking for it. Absolutely asking for it. And on the subject of orthopaedic injuries, my daughter, I shouldn't laugh, and I've been very upset about it really, Borg. My poor daughter, who has just recently gone through a broken ankle and a left ankle and just about getting back to normal, a few days ago broke her right ankle. I'll let that sink in for a minute more. She's done her right ankle and she's in plaster. She's at home now in plaster with her grandmother. I think they're making earrings. So that's a blow. That is a blow. She's taken it very well. She took the first one very well, and this one, it has got her down pretty badly, but she's accepted it again. She's accepted the fate of being immobilised for another 4 or 5 weeks. Poor thing. And it's not because of lack of milk or something, Borg. She's strong as anything. It's sheer bad luck. Bad luck. It has made our reading of Clara and the Sun, it's suddenly given us another level to go on that as a father, and then as a father who experiences the sort of pain because of the pain of the daughter. It's these things that Clara's learning and observing in this amazing book. I'll tell you something, Borg, he's written it probably during the pandemic. I don't know for sure. It came out around then. Came out 2021, I think. So he must have written it. Seems to reference it, I would say. But this is very callous. I'm going to say it anyway. But if we had to have a pandemic for him to write that book, then it's not all doom and gloom, because I love it, Borg. I think he's the man for the job. And in fact, I don't know how obvious this observation is, but I can't help thinking of Mr. Stevens when I'm reading Clara. They're very similar in many ways. Standing back until you're called for, and in the meantime observing events with a very discerning eye. So he's either making the link himself, or he just likes writing like that, and we get to just enjoy it. I don't know, but I haven't finished the book, but it's about a sick child and some dying kids and the people around them, how life unfolds around this situation that Clara's observing, and a lot of it, because it's observed through the eyes of a robot, he's so clever in that he makes it even more moving. I wish I knew the tricks, It's really something how, well, it's something how he puts it together, I would say. I like it very much. There's more to talk about that. I mean, for example, Borg, you are Clara. But these robots are AI robots. I can't bring myself to hop over those trees, Bob, because the consequences could be disastrous. I'm going to go this way. You are Clara, but this Clara, either because of it's a sort of device of the plot, or because he just hasn't thought that, thought that far. But this Clara is limited. She's turned on as a robot, seemingly with not a great deal of knowledge. And like I told you, she calls telephones oblongs, which is wonderful, but you'd have thought that an AI super intelligent robot would have the basics like that on the disc. It would be like wondering what a hand is. But he's probably done it just for the device of the book. And indeed, if the robot did know everything, there's less story to be told, I guess. But essentially, you are Clara. And but you're not, as I say, you're limited. You're not plugged in to a massive Borg-like connection up of all robots. You're autonomous, it seems. At the moment, it doesn't go that far into your workings. And I guess that's because the book is above that, sort of fanning about, and he's dealing with themes, human themes. But as we see with the robot cars, if one of them has a crash, if there's a fault, it instantly shares all information with all the others, all the other Teslas. We know that. So it's an entirely different take. Look, we're going on, Borg. We're going on. Look, there's a tree. It's fallen down. Let's get back into the barn. So as I say, Borg, there's no shortage of saplings. You see all these are all going to be trees, enormous trees. So that's how it goes. It evens out. But if they come down at a greater rate, then that throws it all off, because these aren't going to grow at a quicker rate. So we might see this all thinned out. Certainly by the time you might wake up into some sort of Clara-like biped form. I'd rather have you as a kind of, I don't know, a little flying thing, like a demon, like Pullman's Demons, or even the genie in that sci-fi romp I've been reading. I don't know if I'd need you as a humanoid. It'd be a bit weird. Anyway, we've strayed onto the neighbour's patch here. We better get off it. It's not polite, Borg, to go on another person's property. To say the least. In America, if you went on another person's property, you might get your head blown off if the right sort of nutter lived there. But here, it's more a case you just respect the boundaries. They're not here anyway. It's my German neighbours who come in the summer. There's our mouse. Do you remember the day, Borg, we sort of farcically rigged this up thinking, this won't do, we'll fix it next weekend, but it's worked a treat. And it's still on, and it's scared off all the mice. Next to that you can see the progress of the buds. I think they were about like this last year when we were just beginning our view of the birch tree forest, Borg. I would say it's about the same time. Just at the weekend, actually, Borg, we were all out in the garden sunbathing, basically. It was that sort of day, you know, jobs were being done, everything was being fixed. And now we're right back into the midst of winter. I'm just going to grab my canvas here. So, yes, Borg, the main news really is my poor daughter, you know. It's nothing is more important than that. But as I say, she's accepted it, and what else can you do? And we're gonna get through it. It is just the 4 weeks plaster cast rather than the 5, which makes an enormous difference, really. So, I mean, it puts things in perspective again, you know. Things like that, things like a wall, you know, anything that sees you enter that slightly acute stage puts things in perspective. And it's just as well, really, Bob, because today last night in fact, we had our yearly refusal of help from Miss Dahlgren and the working grant financial aid for artists, which I well and truly don't even skip a beat anymore when I receive my refusals. But refused we have been. Can't lie and say we're not, you know, that money wouldn't have helped, because it would have helped enormously. But we are wretched, Borg. We are wretched, and we remain so, and that is some consolation, along with, you know, thinking of the wider problems that can afflict one, like the health of one's daughter, like a great war. We are not in the least bothered, despite we couldn't resist having a little look at those who did receive the award. And as whenever we do that, we in the end we concede that it seems fair enough, in a sense, because the people who received it, in the main, overwhelmingly appear as genuine career artists with long CVs, lists of group and solo exhibitions, evidence, documentation of well-finished contemporary works in the way you would expect someone who is showing themselves off to do it. You know, that's all the evidence in the world that those artists are not messing about and are career artists. So you have to say fair enough, because when we do the opposite. We don't have anything on paper to show our successes and acceptance, and we attempt to gain favour through the work itself, which, to be honest, what did I sent them I sent them the Wretched Painter trailer and Dane Bowers and a couple of oils, accompanied by a non-existent CV. In fact, it just says MA PhD, which in a way is quite good. But, you'd have to say that's quite good. But in another way, it's very bad because what that might look like is this person has, got those initial qualifications and has done nothing with them for 10 years. On paper, that is what it perhaps looks like. So, looking through it, you see the money's been given to a certain sort of contemporary art professional, the likes of which you began to see maybe 10, 15 years ago. A sort of globe-trotting contemporary art, sort of very flexible, precarious living, the sort of way of living that was all discussed in the changing nature of capitalism and enterprise culture, sort of created this type of career, and that's what you see. And I hold my hands up and say, of course, we don't get the bloody money. Imagine them Dahlgren sat there looking at Dane Bowers. And our boat race going on all around Nortelia about the Bookshop Fellow and David Icke. We're more like a troll with a hobby than a contemporary artist in the middle of a career of art. So no, we don't skip a beat, and it makes us feel better to see that at least they're not giving it the money to a load of people like me. Then we'd really feel bad. But ultimately, it doesn't change anything for us. The way we've been through the mill of the post-truth era, Borg, the way we've tried to engage in our own way via the Dignity Scholarship, it's brought us out the other end meaning now, by coincidence, but quite appropriately at the time where this type of politics has ended in a very real war, an invasion that's changed the whole world. That's the end. That is a bookend for us. And our response, as we've slowly been imagining it, is not to dive further into contemporary art, critical art world of art and the times, but no, it's to turn it in the direction of socializing. As funny as that I'm sure seems to you, Borg. Out of necessity, it must be said, we're going to do some art classes. But also, we're going to try and paint more in public and engage in simple talk. Is this somehow a response to the times? Or is it simply our own journey where we feel we need to do it? And as usual, I can't tell how much is one, how much is the other. But I do think that is the dignified angle to take now, the best for work and sanity, compared with trying to steam in to some, very well publicized arenas where you could sell yourself with contemporary artwork. We're too long in the tooth, Borg, now. You can look that one up. for all that crack. And we have it confirmed year after year that what we do is not enough. And we must, to make hay in that world, inevitably you have to dive into it and stick your elbows out, Borg, and run around like a headless postgrad. And obviously we can't do that. We are wretched, Borg. We just need to marry that wretchedness with a sociable outcome, with a distant view, arm's length view of the wider abstractions, which, as I say, as they've culminated in real warfare in Europe, these abstractions are no longer the internet game, the troll game. I mean, that's all there, of course it is, but we see where it ends. I mean, one thing I do know about what's going on is the justification is denazification of Ukraine. You know, you might as well say the justification is to get rid of all the dragons, you know, or there's a Godzilla reptiles being created to get rid of. That's the reason. You might as well. Doesn't matter. It's the sort of thing you'd hear on the InfoWars fella or Ike or anything else, but it's actually come from a state that's actually invaded. So all that mess has now ended in that. And one effect is it seems a little inappropriate now to go on about it, so, you know, to find yet more examples of this fool and this idiot, of Toby Young or Farage or whoever else, whatever nitwit. It you know, we don't need to go there now. And added to that, Borg, since we're on the subject, this is supposed to be the crucial, decisive decade for humanity, and look what's happened. And this is all going to drag on most likely till Donald steams back in. He's going to more than likely win by hook or by crook, and whatever other kickoff goes on at that point, the relations with Russia in this war will change, and there will be untold chaos. But not on the internet anymore, in actual international, real geopolitical chaos. That would be my bet. So in that sense, one, we're not going to go on about it like it's something to reveal. And two, we're certainly not going to run around ignoring it and pretending we can just go and have a nice little art career. No, that's coming. We've got no choice but to stay wretched and build on that. Build on what that means, because it's a positive state, believe it or not, Borg. And build on that and socialise it, you know. Being wretched, in the sense we mean, is good. It means getting your feet on and your mind on the ground, concentrating only on some sort of cathartic doing, and taking examples from history of masters and helping you to develop some sort of way of living alongside events or nature, and then maybe we're going to try and socialise it a little bit. That's what we mean by wretched. Of course, we might well be wretched in the traditional sense, But yeah, that really, Bog, we've been going on now, but it only takes a slightly real event to spark off an enormous amount of associations, Borg, and the real event, of course, has been Miss Dahlgren's email, and it's caused us this reassessment. Are we doing it because, you know, fairly obviously we're more bothered than we let on? I really don't think so, Borg. If we received that money, we'd be tied to Miss Dahlgren and required to make reports and produce the goods in a certain way that it's expected, and bang goes our wretchedness. So no, we're not. It's not sour grapes, but it is all in all what we've been provoked into telling you all this, Borg. Unfortunately, but it does fit with our planned image, our planned picture today. Let me show you. That's what we're doing, Borg. Can you see what the subject is? Yes, it is a table. The actual subject is nothing. There's nothing. There's nothing more to say or do. It's nothing. We've made a sketch of nothing. Of course, you need the table there to signify the nothing. You know, we don't want to actually do an abstract nothing. And within that, you could write, you know, many a little essay, I suppose, Paul. But we need the table there to indicate the absence of subject. Of course, you would normally place the subject on the table. I'm not going to try and explain the ins and outs of that, Borg, because we've already gone on for 15 minutes. But suffice to say, there's already nothing on the canvas. But that doesn't work. That's not how it works, Borg. So we've got to manufacture nothing. We've got to use something. It might be a device, a bit like in Clara and the Sun. Clara has to be slightly ignorant of things to allow the story to develop. You know, we've got to include this table to indicate nothing. Nothing left to do or say, or is it that things have reached a point where it would be unproductive to make a subject? There's no subject left because war is on, the game is up. I don't know. But we're clearly aiming at some sort of final attempt at a pictorial symbolism, not just for our project, but to sum up the post-truth era, our work into the post-truth era. You know, we've had all these broken trees. You know, we've had disaster metaphors. We've had soil. We've had books and soil, logs. You know, we're trying to find it, and it just seems that nothing is the best. And a bit like in our banner, Borg, that we put together. If you'll notice at the beginning, we've got a sign that has Magritte's "This is not a pipe" thing, which is about representation. And then as the montage goes on, that sign changes. And I think the next one says, "This is a pipe." And then I think the next one, I think it has, "It will be a pipe," or At some point the pipe's gone and there's a machine gun. And on it goes, and it's all about representation of reality, basically, through images, and you might even say the media. But anyway, towards the end, there's a big bear. The furry bear's got the sign, and there's nothing on it. There's nothing on it because that would seem to be the goal of the far-right element, the post-truth era. As Bannon said, he's never fighting the Democratic Party. It's always a war with the media. You flood the zone with shit, so no one knows up from down anymore, to the point where you can invade somewhere just by saying, you know, you've got Godzilla locked away, so we're going to invade. And why not? Because there's nothing. You can do anything. So we're doing that. We're going to do nothing. Well, we've made a start, and we can probably say we've got something and nothing. Never has that been more true, Borg. We've made a start. There's the table. I suppose we're wondering how exactly to paint the wall at the back. If we weren't over egging everything, we'd just lash it in and leave it at that. But it's got us wondering how best should you paint nothing? Should you give it loads and loads and make something of the nothing? Big texture in pasto? Or should you just leave it very thin? I really don't know. And in fact, that's probably the best state to be in, Borg. I don't think I'd want to prejudge or pre-decide something based on the ideas. The thing to do is to go for it in some way, and then that will give us the answer. Through the doing of it will give us the answer, and then we can either change it or do a different one next time. Either way, we don't seem to want to lash on the table. Somehow we're patching that in. Let's be honest, Borg, if we wanted to, we could lash this out and be finished by now, if we really laid it on thick. And we perhaps could do it with a bit of vigour, a bit of success. But I suppose we're quite comfortable down there on the chair, painting the table. And perhaps that's why we've sort of ended up doing it a bit carefully. Not that it looks particularly careful, but it's in many, many patches. I mean, you've painted, Borg, you know what it's like. If I wanted, I could get a bit of paint there and cover this whole thing in a sort of reddy brown in a matter of seconds. But that isn't the way to get everything out of the process, Borg. You could put it like that. Yes, it's unknown. We simply must plough on. The answer will come out of the doing of it, I suspect.